Want to talk a bit more about those planned deportations. I'm very pleased to be joined now by Hameed Hakimi. He's an associate fellow at Chatham House, where he focuses on the politics and security of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Welcome to the programme, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Give us a little of the political and economic context first, if you can. Why has Pakistan decided to crack down on Afghans in the country now?
Well, there's a historical context. Afghan refugees in the neighboring Pakistan and Afghanistan are one of the most prolonged refugee cases in the world, perhaps only overtaken by Palestinian refugees. So this is a long-term problem in the region. And they have regularly, over the past few decades, been used as bargaining chip both by Pakistan and by Iran in their external affairs, and also trying to incentivize policies by getting, for example, funding from international donors for hosting these refugee populations. And in large part, Afghans, at least, the evidence that is there through our research and conversations, a large part Afghans are very grateful for the hosting that they've had in these two countries. And now we're obviously talking about Pakistan. So Pakistan right now is at a historical low point economically and politically. The departure of the American-led NATO presence in Afghanistan that some predicted would usher in a regional hegemony for Pakistan hasn't materialized. So Afghanistan is isolated. The Taliban regime that the Pakistani state supported and very happily celebrated their return to power in August 2021 haven't really made a lot of progress in their external relations. So Pakistan is isolated politically, diplomatically, especially around Afghanistan issues, but also an absolute economic meltdown in Pakistan that's taken place in the past couple of years and is ongoing. So amidst all of this, it's a bit like what we know in the Western countries. It's textbook populism to blame the foreigners. And although here the Pakistani authorities emphasize that this is not just Afghans, the policy is not targeting Afghans, but it's a byword when you say unregistered foreigners in Pakistan. So that is a byword for the Afghans who are there, who don't have a route to registering. A lot of these Afghans, absolute majority of them, would love to have a registered status in Pakistan. But Pakistan is neither a signatory to the UN Convention on Refugees, and nor it allows the claiming of asylum by Afghan refugees in the way that Afghan refugees can claim asylum in other countries. So the refugees, the Afghans, are very much caught between a hard place and the rock, in the sense that they don't know how they can attain the registered status for which then they're being deported now. And amongst them, last point, amongst them there is a large number of people who are forced to leave Afghanistan after the Taliban took over, and they are what we consider to be at-risk Afghans. They are the ones who want to be resettled abroad and largely entered Pakistan with their visas and passports, but which those ones have now run out. The visas have expired, and Pakistani state has not been very clear about how it issues visas. There's been a lot of evidence from the human rights commissions, from international human rights organizations, documenting how Afghans have been exploited and extorted for paying horrendous amounts of money just to attain a Pakistani visa inside Afghanistan. So it's a very precarious situation.
Indeed, and there are so many people that we're talking about here. It's something like 1.7 million undocumented Afghan migrants in Pakistan. Just at a practical level, how will Pakistani authorities go about deporting so many people? Presumably, some of them will stay.
Well, I've written about this issue extensively about Afghan migrations in the region and in Europe. So I've been watching this for a while. To me, it looks like the current caretaker government in Pakistan had the green light from the security establishment, i.e. the military, to prepare for this. So they've been preparing to do this for a while. The current caretaker government doesn't have an electoral mandate in that sense, so they don't really have an electoral backlash either, because previously the governments have announced similar ordinances which have resulted in the harassment and humiliation of Afghans being detained by the police on the streets and things like that, but it's never been this well organized. So I fear that the Pakistani state, the current caretaker government, has made a lot of arrangement, and they're not shying away from putting children and women in the jails. And there have been a lot of incidents of that. The problem is that I think they're trying to use also in Pakistan this policy as a way of pressuring the Taliban regime, whom they hoped in Islamabad to have a much better relationship with compared to the previous Afghan government that constantly accused Pakistan of harboring terrorism against Afghanistan. So the the Taliban regime in Afghanistan are not in the view of the Pakistani establishment cooperating with Pakistan's security concerns, because Taliban say to the Pakistanis that the security issues that they're blaming the Taliban for are all domestic problems for Pakistan, that they need to sort it out inside Pakistan. So there's a lot of bargaining happening here, and I think it's a lot of kind of utilizing the plight of these refugees as political tool. And I fear that there is going to be a massive humanitarian catastrophe, which is already unfolded in Afghanistan and in Pakistan because of natural disasters and the earthquakes recently in Afghanistan. So that the state doesn't have the capacity inside Afghanistan to absorb such numbers.
And just a final question, and briefly, if you can, spell out for us concretely what dangers are likely to be faced by those Afghans, particularly women and girls, who do end up returning to Taliban-run Afghanistan.
Well, I must emphasize that not all of this 1.4 or 2 million people that are being returned forcefully will be at risk of the Taliban harassment. But of course, there are human rights concerns. Girls can't go to school currently beyond grade 6 in Afghanistan. So a lot of the women would be left without education. And also this can brew conflict inside Afghanistan, because a lot of these people that are being deported have never seen Afghanistan before. So they would need a place to go back to. And if there is no reintegration that is planned, this could potentially lead to a lot of local disputes over where these people live, already precarious situation economically inside Afghanistan. So the dangers are not just a single threat to human rights matters from the Taliban regime. It's far beyond that, and it can brew conflict in Afghanistan for the longer term. But also, it's not helpful for Pakistan's future as well, because a lot of these Afghans that are being returned are part of local neighborhoods and communities in Pakistan. They've built lives there, they've economically contributed, and a lot of people on the ground inside Pakistan are unhappy, including the National Human Rights Commission of Pakistan that's been lobbying against this law.
Hameed Hakimi talking to us there from Chatham House in London. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for your time and your analysis today.
Thank you.
Well, let's return now to what is our